Please welcome Bernadette McClellan.
It's absolutely wonderful to be here in the city of Chicago. When I was at school, I got top marks for a project on the Great Lakes. And so this morning at 7:30, my husband and I sat on Lake Michigan and had a cup of coffee. So it was 2 years ago, actually, 2013, that Tim and I stopped off in Chicago for a day. And we were in transit on our way to New York City. I did go and have lunch at Michael Jordan's, and we did go to the top of the Hancock building. However, something else happened that day. We partook in the fine hospitality of this great city. They were offering free hugs in the CBD. And I said to the young girl on my right, I said, what is it that makes you do this? Like, what's behind all this free hug campaign? And what she said actually stunned me. She said, every person that we meet has a story. And behind every story, there is another story. And it doesn't matter if they are wealthy or are on welfare. She said, sometimes our hugs save lives. And I thought, wow, that is one hell of a value proposition. And I thought to myself after that, I thought, you know what, as a sales community, as salespeople, sales leaders, business owners, what is our collective value proposition? If free hugs can impact somebody's lives on the street of a CBD, then I think that our role as salespeople and sales leaders impacts people's lives as well. Because if a business does not have revenue and profits, then that business dies. And the impact on the economy is huge. People lose their jobs. People's choices are limited. And hope sometimes is completely lost. We have a responsibility as salespeople. We have a privileged responsibility. Our role is to sell not just products and services. Seth Godin says that we have a responsibility to passionately sell our art. Dan Pink says that our role is to move people. And I believe that our role as salespeople and sales leaders is to become change makers. That what we're actually selling is change. And that our whole responsibility is to sell a difference. Selling today is not just about profits. Selling today is about purpose. It is not just about the shareholders and making them fat, but it's looking after every possible stakeholder. It's not just about the money, it's about meaning. It's not about the statistics, it's about stories. In 1989, a shift began to appear. Now, in 1989 was quite an important year. Apart from the birth of Taylor Swift and Homer Simpson, Tim Berners-Lee gave birth to the World Wide Web. And the World Wide Web opened up for us a level of connection that is far surpassed anything that we can think of. He has helped take us from the industrial economy through the knowledge economy to the connection economy today. But something else happened in 1989. For the first time in the history of the United States of America, more than half of this population was over the age of 40 years of age. And you might think, so what? What does that matter? What it matters is that not just socially, but economically as well, this country began to be driven by midlife values. And the culture began to shift. All of a sudden, the triple bottom line. All of a sudden, it's purpose, it's people, and it's the planet. And you might think to yourself, okay, so what on earth has this got to do with salespeople, and where does all of this fit in? Let me ask you a couple of questions. Do you think today that your environment is getting more simple or it is getting more complex? Do you think today that the expectations of your customers are staying the same, or do you think that they're increasing? Do you think today that businesses are finding it easier to compete, or they are finding it much harder to compete? We don't think, we know. It is getting harder. Expectations are increasing, and our world is getting more complex. And if we think for a moment about those famous words of Charles Darwin, it is not the strongest or the most intelligent who will survive, but it is those who can best adapt to change. And today, salespeople need more than ever to begin to adapt to change. So we know our evolutionary journey. We know that we have come from the transactional line of sales, where all we did was we made contact, we knocked on doors, we spilled our guts about the content of our product, and we just closed for the contract, and then moved on to the next unsuspecting victim. And then in the 80s, we went through a transitionary period where we learned about rapport. And we learned about spin selling and TAS and all those other methodologies. And all of a sudden, customer satisfaction came into the mix, and we began to tick that customer sat box. But we've reached another fork in the road today, because our buyers don't want a salesperson that comes in and gets their energy off the hunt. But they also don't want the salesperson that rings up to say, hi, how you going, and brings donuts in. That's a courier can do that. What they want is they want somebody who can come in and out of their account with total precision, be totally bold, and challenge their thinking, not them. They want somebody who is ruthlessly relevant. And they also want somebody who is there to serve them. What a salesperson has to do to adapt is to consider three key areas. They need to look at their approach. And their approach to the market is all about the value that they bring to the table themselves. What is their personal leadership skills? What is the value of self? From the focus of their conversations, they need to bring their thought leadership skills to the table. They need to be able to articulate the value of their offering, their idea, their product, or their service in such a way that it ticks the boxes for the buyer, that they can bring their insights to the conversation. And thirdly is the sales leadership skills based on their outcome. And that is, what is the bigger difference that they are bringing to the market? What is that difference for their buyers, customers, the consumers? And so when we look at those three pillars, if you like, the approach, the focus, and the outcome, and we overlay it with the evolution of a salesperson, we actually come up with 9 commercial conversations that are key today. What we come up with is our approach, our focus, and our outcome. Today, our approach is not just about knocking on doors. It must include being able to have the courage of your convictions and to stand in a state of conviction with the buyer. It must also mean that building rapport is only part of it. Connecting today is also about mindfulness and you connecting with yourself. And the third component of our approach is not just knocking on doors or cold calling, but it is the art of social. When we look at the focus, features, advantages and benefits, we need that, but it's also more. Our content must be storytelling. We must be able to consult not just through finding the pain and handing them an aspirin, but it must be about building and releasing tension. And we must find meaning and create context. And so from an outcome perspective, yes, we do need to sign the order. We do need to sell at a really good price. But we've also got to learn how to ask. We've got to conspire for our customers' success and our own, whether that's through collaboration or co-opetition. And finally, the art of the start is where we've got to begin. Always begin with the end in mind. We've heard that today. And that is, what is our intention? And our intention must always be to contribute. And so we look at that and we think to ourselves, well, okay, if these are 9 commercial conversations, who is it that wants to make a difference? And how are you going to do that? So what I've shared with you here from a strategic perspective is, firstly, know who you are and who you need to be to have a commercial conversation that makes a difference. Secondly, elevate. Elevate your conversations. Bring them up out of the weeds. Bring them up away from the spicks and specks of your product and start to talk at a value conversation that matters to your buyer and not you. And thirdly, have an intention based on contribution. The word sell comes from the Old English word sellen, which means to give. And so if we all go to market with that in mind, it's like any relationship. You give that which you want to receive. And so the most important question I have for you is that if I was to ring your top 3 clients, and if I was to ask them, what was the difference they sold you? What might your clients say? Thank you.